In a courtroom where power reigns and appearances deceive, a man in stained overalls is about to humble everyone watching. But first, they mock him, because no one thinks a janitor belongs here. Not in her courtroom. It was 8:45 a.m. on a rainy Monday morning when the janitor arrived. The courthouse lobby was already bustling. Defendants in cheap suits, lawyers with polished briefcases, and clerks with too much coffee and too little patience. He came in quietly, like always. No umbrella, rain dripping from his dark green overcoat, a mop handle sticking out of his wheeled bucket. Everyone moved past him like he was part of the wall. His name tag said, Harold. His boots squeaked on the marble floor. He pushed open the double doors to Courtroom B. Inside, it was chaos. A shouting match between an irate defense lawyer and a smug prosecutor. People were standing, whispering, waiting. Judge Melinda Halverson, newly appointed and known for her zero-tolerance attitude, sat on her throne behind the elevated bench. Cold eyes, sharp features, voice like a dagger. Who's responsible for this mess? She barked, slamming her gavel once. The room fell quiet. The floor near the witness stand had a large coffee stain. The janitor's cart stood next to it. He had been cleaning it when the session began. Everyone turned toward Harold. He stood silently, hands still holding his mop. The judge squinted at him. You. What's your name? Harold, ma'am. Judge, she corrected with a smirk. This is a courtroom, not a bus stop. Can you not see a trial is about to begin? I was just finishing up, ma'am. Judge, I didn't mean to interrupt. Snickers in the courtroom. One man in the back chuckled loud enough to get a stare from the bailiff. The judge leaned forward. Tell me, Harold, do you make it a habit to delay justice with your janitorial responsibilities? The sarcasm stung like cold metal. No, Judge, just doing my job. Well, maybe your job is somewhere else this morning. Get out. She waved a hand like swatting. A fly, Harold paused, then nodded, pushed his cart slowly toward the door, but not before turning slightly and locking eyes with the woman who just dismissed him like dirt. Something passed in that look, just for a second, and then he was gone. The courtroom resumed its noise, and no one gave the janitor another thought. No one but young clerk Julia, seated at the side of the bench. She had noticed something about the way the man carried himself, like he'd been in rooms like this before. Like he didn't flinch when humiliated. Like he had seen war. The trial began with the usual formalities. A young defendant, Marcus Tisdale, barely 19, stood before the court. Baggy suit, shaky hands, accused of breaking into a pawn shop. He pleaded not guilty, public. Defender by his side. Prosecutor oozing confidence. Judge Halverson poised to tear the boy's world apart. But Clerk Julia couldn't focus on the case. She kept glancing at the double doors, where the janitor had left, where his presence still lingered like a quiet question. The case carried on. But then, a commotion outside. The doors flung open. Harold. Back again. Same coat, same boots, but something different in his eyes. Calm, focused. He was carrying a small folder. The judge looked up, clearly annoyed. You again? Her tone sharpened. The cleaning closet is in the back, Mr. Janitor. Perhaps you got lost? Snickers. Again, this time louder. The prosecutor actually laughed. Harold walked slowly down the aisle. I believe this was left behind during the cleaning, Your Honor. He held out the folder. Judge Halverson frowned, motioning the bailiff to take it. But as the bailiff opened it, his face changed. He leaned in to whisper something to the judge. She raised an eyebrow, then slowly opened the folder herself. The room was quiet again. A beat passed, then two. Her eyes scanned the pages, her lips tightened. Her posture straightened, her smile vanished. What is this? She asked. Harold didn't answer. He just stood there, still as stone. The judge cleared her throat. "This court is in session. Mr. Janitor, you may leave." But her voice wavered. "Just slightly." Harold nodded and turned again, but not before stopping. "Right by Marcus, the young defendant." He looked at the boy, long and calm. "You hold your head up, son," he said, and walked away. Gasps, whispers. Someone pulled out a phone. Someone else murmured, "Who the hell is this guy?" Julia watched him go. She looked at the judge, now visibly shaken. She had seen that look before. Not often. But when powerful people realize they've made a mistake, and it's too late to walk it back, the judge struggled to regain composure. "Let's proceed," she snapped. But the damage had been done. The room had shifted, respect had shifted, and the janitor was no longer invisible. The courtroom atmosphere had soured. Judge Halverson's voice was clipped, her authority faltering. Marcus's public defender tried to continue, but the prosecutor looked distracted, glancing at the folder the judge had now tucked beneath her bench, and Clerk Julia. She couldn't take it any more. On break, she rushed to the judge's chambers. "Your Honor, may I ask, who is he?" Judge Halverson didn't look up. She was staring at a document in front of her. "The one Harold had left. His name is Harold Jameson," she finally muttered. "Doesn't ring a bell," Julia replied. The judge exhaled sharply. "Of course it wouldn't to you. But to me? To anyone who spent time in D.C., he was a ghost." Julia blinked. "A ghost?" The judge slid the document toward her. Julia read the top line. "Harold A. Jameson, former Deputy Director, U.S. Marshal Special Operations Group, Retros." Julia's mouth parted in shock. "Wait, this Harold? The guy who mops the halls?" The judge didn't answer. She pulled out another document from the folder, Medal of Valor. Distinguished Service Cross, Homeland Hero Citation. And finally, a photo. Harold, 20 years younger, leading a hostage rescue in a war-torn embassy. Same eyes, same composure. Different life. Back in the courtroom, whispers were building. Someone had Googled him. Articles began surfacing. America's Quiet Guardian. The operative who disappeared after saving 34 lives in one day. By the time court resumed, the energy had shifted completely. Even Marcus looked stunned. The judge tried to press on, but murmurs broke through the walls of authority. And then, the back doors opened again. This time, not Harold. A tall man in a dark navy suit stepped inside. "Your Honor," he said, flashing a badge. "I'm here at the request of Mr. Jameson," gasps Judge. Halverson stood. "Request? For what?" "To provide character testimony," the man said, walking toward Marcus's table. "For the defendant." The room froze. The agent turned toward Marcus. "I served under Mr. Jameson for 5 years. He doesn't vouch for many, but when he does, people listen." He placed a sealed letter in front of the court. Judge Halverson opened it. She didn't speak, but her hands trembled slightly as she read. Harold wasn't even in the room. He didn't need to be. His presence, his truth, was doing all the talking. Judge Halverson sat in rigid silence as the letter's final line burned into her mind. "If Harold Jameson believes this young man deserves a second chance, I stand with him. So should any judge worthy of the title." Director Colleen Mercer, U.S. Department of Justice. She slowly lowered the paper. The courtroom was now dead, quiet, as if holding its collective breath. I will take this into consideration," she muttered, avoiding eye contact with everyone. But the damage was done. The woman who had smirked at Harold just hours ago now seemed shaken, like the floor beneath her had shifted, and she had nothing solid left to stand on. Suddenly, the courtroom doors opened again. A frail, older woman stepped inside, supported by a cane. Marcus's face lit up. Grandma? She nodded and took a slow, steady seat behind him. I heard my boy was in trouble. But then I heard who was standing up for him. Her eyes locked with the judge's. I know you, Judge Halverson. I worked housekeeping in this courthouse 20 years ago. You never said good morning. But Mr. Jameson? He always helped me carry supplies. Even when he wore a badge. The gallery buzzed with murmurs. Judge Halverson's composure cracked just a bit. She picked up her gavel, but the power behind it had vanished. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Fields, it appears you have powerful friends in surprising places. Marcus raised his eyes, steady for the first time that day. I never asked him for help. He just saw me. That line landed harder than any punch. He just saw me. The judge looked down again, the guilt starting to weigh on her. I will be issuing a revised sentence, she announced. No jail time. Community service, working under Mr. Jameson's supervision. Gasps. Marcus turned, speechless. His grandmother's eyes welled with tears. And, the judge continued, a formal apology, to be issued by this court, for the treatment of Mr. Jameson. Dead silence. A tear slid down Marcus's cheek. Outside the courthouse, cameras had gathered, journalists swarmed, wanting a statement. But Harold was nowhere to be found, just a single quote, pinned to the door by a janitor's magnet. True justice isn't loud. It's what happens when no one's looking. A week passed. The courthouse returned to its rhythm. Gavel strikes, echoing footsteps, and whispers between attorneys. But something had changed. Harold Jameson still came in at 5 a.m., still pushed the mop bucket, still scrubbed the same marble floors. But now, people nodded at him. Security guards stood when he passed. Even Judge Halverson paused one morning to say awkwardly, "Good morning, Mr. Jameson." He nodded back. No smugness, no pride, just that same quiet, unshakable grace. Meanwhile, at Lincoln High, Marcus was already 3 days into his community service. He mopped floors, emptied trash, and wiped graffiti. At first, he sulked, but Harold watched him, not with judgment, but with patience. You ever think of becoming more than what the world tells you? Harold asked one afternoon. Marcus looked up. What do you mean? Harold handed him a key. To the supply closet. You're not just cleaning. You're responsible for something now. Marcus blinked. No one had trusted him with anything, ever. That moment stuck. Later that week, Marcus brought in a notebook, then another. He started asking questions about military service, about discipline. Harold never pushed, but seeds were being planted. Meanwhile, in Judge Halverson's chambers, she stared at her reflection, then at the newspaper headline beside her coffee. Janitor's letter stuns court. DOJ backs. Local hero. The article didn't mention her name, but everyone knew. She'd requested a meeting with Harold when he entered. She stood. For once, not in authority, but in humility. I misjudged you, she said. You misjudged him, Harold corrected gently. And that matters more. She swallowed. You ever think of coming back to work here? As more than janitorial staff? He smiled faintly. I already am more. Titles don't define that. 1 week later, Marcus was cleaning the main hallway of Lincoln High when a teacher walked by and stopped. You missed a spot, he joked. Marcus grinned, wiped the corner, and stood taller. Then he saw something. A small plaque near the front doors. In honor of Harold Jameson, a man who never needed a badge to command respect. Some people chase power. Others simply carry it inside them. Harold Jameson was never looking to be seen, but by the time people finally did, it changed them more than it ever changed him. Because greatness doesn't need an audience. Sometimes it just needs a mop, a key, and a heart that refuses to turn away.